So my friend owns Bullitt number 868, and I've done a story about this car, and I've actually had a couple friends who've owned this car during the last, several years. And he messaged me and said, "Hey, do you know what this sound is?" The car was making a horrific noise. Pump the clutch a couple times. Does that change anything? Yeah. I think it's back. I think it's back here somewhere. Maybe one of the valve covers or under the valve covers.
Yeah, go ahead and turn it off.
So my brother and I were hanging out at the time, and I said, "Do you want to go over and look at the Bullitt and see if we can figure out what that noise is?" And my brother said, "Yeah, let's go do it." So we went over there, and as you could see in that last video, if you noticed, we had the serpentine belt off because at first we were wondering if it was the water pump or a pulley that was making a ton of noise and echoing through the engine. And so the only way to really know that was to take off the serpentine belt and just eliminate those as options. Now we had to do a lot of diagnosis to figure out what this was, because we thought it was a rocker arm that had popped off on the valve train. It was beaten around inside. We thought that maybe it was the throwout bearing on the transmission, or possibly the pilot bearing. Maybe something was just beat up and destroyed and the bearings were just shot, and it was making a lot of terrible noise, which I've heard terrible noises coming from the throwout bearings before as well. And so I just said, well, it runs and it's not in the valve train once we took the belt off, and the noise had actually gone away for a little bit. So we're like, okay, well, if it was valve train related, the noise wouldn't disappear and then the noise wouldn't come back. So let me take the car to my house and we'll see if we can do something with it there. So he was really happy to let us take the car. And I said, "Don't worry, I'll be nice to it." And he looked at me like, "I trust you, I promise. Out of anybody, you're the person I'd want to drive my car." And so I drove off and I said, "I'll tell my wife that I bought it," and just laughing, because when I went to go help him, my wife said, "Wait, so you're going to go look at a Bullitt, or you're going to look at someone's Bullitt to help them?" And I said, "I'm going to look at one to help them. I'm not going to look at buying one."
There might be something that's in the bell housing that's in that, bell housing.
Yep, I agree. And so first my brother said, let's take off the clutch cable, we'll pull the clutch fork away from the diaphragm fingers, and so that way we'll know whether the noise is coming from a really destroyed throwout bearing or if it's somewhere else in the engine. So we did that first.
Okay, go ahead and start it.
So that checked out. It was not the throwout bearing. We thought possibly the pilot bearing, but why don't we slowly start the engine, and we'll just, without starting the engine, we'll just turn it over a few times and check to see if each of the pressure plate bolts are in there, because maybe a pressure plate bolt's loose and it's beating around in there or something. Maybe it came out, so we did that. And my brother suggested we record it in slow motion so that he can look for each pressure plate bolt. So this is all that in slow motion.
You ready? Yep. Okay, I won't start on this box. Well, it might start. Put the gas in them.
So that all checked out, all the bolts were there, it didn't seem like that was the problem, and so I said, what if it's the starter? What if the starter's not completely disengaging or something and it's beating up on the flywheel and it's echoing through the engine? Because it really sounded like it was in the front, then it sounded like it was in the valve covers, and it sounded like it was in the back. So we got under there and recorded the starter. And we were ready to pull that transmission off, we were ready to pull the valve covers off, we were going to do a lot of work, so let's check out the starter. So that sounded pretty bad, and so we tried to look through the bottom of the transmission at the flywheel and see if the teeth looked like they were getting beat up and polished from all the metal on metal, and it didn't really look too bad, but we decided to go ahead and go to my house real quick and grab my extra starter and see if it's the starter. Had nothing to lose. So this was one of those moments when we pulled it out and you could definitely see that it was broken. And so here's what the starter should be like, nice and solid. This one was all busted out. You can see how it's just loose hanging in there. It's not straight, it's wobbly, and so it was definitely the starter.
All right. Sounds good.
So we spent the evening working on it and it turned out alright. I just put my old starter on it, took the car for a test drive, ran really good. So haven't heard the noise since, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Obviously we saw the broken starter, but that was kind of a hard one to diagnose. I was about to pull off those valve covers and maybe even pull off the transmission and stuff, so I'm glad we did the right diagnosis and got it figured out without having to do all that work. So if your car makes this noise, it's a possibility that's what it is, because I've seen a lot of videos on the New Edge pages, and people have a follower or a rocker arm or whatever, and they come off and they bounce around inside the valve train, or they have rod knock or all sorts of noises in the engine that are pretty bad, or pulleys that are destroyed and squealing and making all sorts of bad noise. So you never really know what it is, especially in a video, so I'm glad we went over and figured that out. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Better yet, I hope this helps somebody if they have a similar problem. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Mustang content.